All right, thank you everyone for coming today. We're talking about the school district of the future, and I am joined here with my very esteemed school system leaders, who I'll introduce in a second. But first I want to introduce myself. My name is Alyssa Morton. I'm the CEO of Empower Schools. We're a national nonprofit that works with states, district schools to support them to design the school models inside of school districts that support students to succeed in schools and in life. So I know that many of you are talking about other models today, but we're really excited to dig into school districts because districts are in a unique position right now. They're facing enrollment decline, political challenge, and also dealing with everything we talked about this morning, the rise of AI, new technology, workforce challenges, and districts are where some of our greatest innovations have started. Some of our smartest minds are leading districts right now, and districts are key to scaling anything that is working. And so really excited to dig into these topics today. I'll start by asking each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us about the school district you lead, the context, the community, and yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am LaTonya Goffney. I am the proud superintendent of Aldine ISD. Yes, I have some people here, thankfully. There is no Aldine, Texas, as you can hear from my twang. I'm from Texas. But if you've ever flown in the Bush Intercontinental Airport, how many of you have flown in the Bush? You were in the middle of Aldine. We're located on the north side of Houston. We serve over 51,000 students. And perhaps what's as important as the number is the fact that our students are 73% Hispanic, 23% African American, 90% economically disadvantaged, and 100% of my schools are Title I. And I tell you that because the work we do, it truly does matter. We center around one belief that we want to create learning experiences that change the futures of the students that we serve. And I am really excited about participating because I recognize there are challenges and there's opportunities in this work, but I also know that in our public schools, we serve more students and we've got to do more innovative things to prepare them for a future that we can't even imagine at this point, but that we see happening right before our eyes.
I'm Scott Langford. I'm Superintendent of Schools in Sumner County, Tennessee. It's just north of Nashville, the bachelorette party capital of the earth now.
It really is. It really is.
We don't have quite as many bachelorette parties. I will tell you the small farm that my great aunt opened, she was a fourth grade teacher for 40 years. The farm that she owned is now a nursery and they do weddings on the weekend. And to rent it for 8 hours, it costs more than the entire farm did. Yeah, so we are the wedding capital of the earth. But Sumner County stretches from the border of Nashville up to the Kentucky state line. So we have a mix of urban, suburban, and rural. Our rural is much like Appalachia. And we're increasingly diversifying in terms of international students across the board, but traditionally more of a suburban district. We're the 8th largest district in Tennessee, 30,000 students. And I think our experience is very similar. You know, it's easy for us to coast and just be successful on academic testing. But you look and you see how many of our kids, even though that we're killing graduation rate and scholarships and AP scores and all that. I was a high school principal for 4 years, and you just watch the number of kids that are graduating early, not for a good reason. The number of kids that they're not disconnected, but they're only checking boxes, and then they get out and they don't know. Only 20% of students in Tennessee right now are completing a post-secondary, whether it's a certificate or a college degree, on time. And, you know, our numbers are a little higher, but not significantly higher. And so I think for us, the challenge is how in a large school district do we become nimble enough so that we can make the transformations necessary to light a fire in kids so that their skill and passion can intersect.
Good afternoon, everybody. If we were still in New York, it'd be almost evening. So good to see you all. I've been up since 4 doing meetings. You know, you do not have the Chancellor of New York City Public Schools sitting up here with you. I am my name is Alan Cheng. I work for New York City Public Schools as the supervising superintendent for our high schools. As a system, by the numbers, roughly 900,000 enrolled students, 160,000 employees, and pretty magnificent place to live and to work and to be. We were joking earlier today that no matter how this session goes, it will be better than any of the board meetings that we typically have to sit through.
That is true.
I hope so. Don't.
Are there any board members in here?
That.
Oh, there is a board member.
And are you from Texas?
And are you from Texas?
So we say that because, as senior leadership and as folks that are really deeply engaged with the public, there's a strong belief that our public schools need to be the primary driver for social and economic mobility. That you may know a thing or two about our mayor, Zoran Mandani. Got some fans, great. One of the key things that we know is that we, as a city, cannot build our way out of an affordability crisis. But through the power of public education, we certainly can be a primary driver at supporting not only the students themselves, but the entire family in making our city a better place to be able to live and thrive. And so the work I get to do is really try to find ways of being able to support that. Before that, led one of the districts within the city as a group of consortium internationals and outward bound schools with some really amazing models of success. And we're trying to be able to find ways of supporting that way of thinking, collaborating with our state education department and with you all.
Thank you. The Alan Cheng. So I want to take a second to see who else is in the room, and this is a good opportunity too, post-lunch, to make you stand up and also give folks in the back a chance to come to the front. There are plenty of seats. And so I'd love for you to stand up if you've ever worked in a district. Ever. Wow.
Oh.
Look at all this
Awesome,
innovation coming from school districts.
Yes.
All right, stay standing if you still work in a district. Aha.
Well.
The smart people.
Interesting.
And then if
All
you're
right.
not with Aldine.
Yeah.
After the panel, come up here if you want to work in a district. We have some great jobs for you. All right, can we see a show of hands? Who's ed tech in the tech space? Okay, yep, wow, lots of hands. All right, so lots of district people went to ed tech. What about philanthropy? We have a lot of philanthropy here. There's a big question about philanthropy's role in district schools. We're gonna talk about that. Any nonprofits, community leaders, elected officials? Yeah, okay, lots of folks. This is exciting. So I want to say that because obviously everybody's coming at this from a different lens. And we're going to have a chance to talk about sort of what do these different groups do well and what do they do poorly? What are they getting wrong? So LaTonya, we'll start with you. When we think about your school district, what are some of the innovations you're building next that you're excited about?
Great question. And, it's hard to believe I'm finishing up my 8th year. Yes. In 2018, it was really important for us to demonstrate what was possible. I began our conversation earlier about the context and the students that we serve, and recognizing, and we heard it time and time again, that zip code is not destiny. And I share with our teachers, both new and those who are returning, that we're not responsible for how kids come to us, but we're responsible for how they leave us. And so we have partnered, and we have lots of innovation that's happening through transformation, but perhaps the one that I'll spend some time on is the one that's most recent and certainly endearing to my heart. A couple of years ago, we launched, but just this past month, we basically had a ribbon cutting for our newest high school. And at this high school, it's called HEAL, Health, Education, and Learning. It's through a partnership with Memorial Hermann and Bloomberg Philanthropies. And yes, that sounds remarkable, but what is most remarkable about it is what it's done for an area, a school area that is a healthcare desert. And prior to launching, as we did the empathy interviews and talked and asked students for what type of educational experience they wanted, what kind of healthcare fields they were interested in, several of them had never even met a nurse.
Wow.
In person. And then when we were working with Memorial Hermann, thinking about the problem that they were going to be solving is, listen, there's a healthcare crisis. And I don't know if there are many Gen X in the room. How many are you considered Gen X? Okay, so we're getting old. So we need good people who are in the healthcare field. But what's exciting is in our district now, and you're welcome to come and see it. I promise it's going to sound like it's not true, but it is absolutely true. We've built a mock hospital, and in this hospital, our children have access to 5 pathways, and they're so excited. We have the nursing pathway. We have the rehabilitation for occupational therapy. We have the pharmacy pathway. We have medical imaging. We have, and the last one is for those who don't like blood, the administration pathway.
Sign me up.
But what's exciting about it is, in addition to that, we also have a school-based health clinic. And so when you walk in today, like, we want to make sure our students graduate with choices and opportunities, but we're providing those today. Today, our students are learning in a real-world environment alongside people who believe in them, because that's what we got when we partnered with Memorial Hermann, people who've invested in them, because that's what we got when we got the funds from Bloomberg Philanthropies, and people who are making sure that they do actually graduate with those choices and opportunities. And so we're creating the future today in Aldine ISD through that one partnership, and welcome anybody to come out and see it, because my description is not doing it service.
That's so exciting. I'm excited to visit. That's right. Scott, tell us about something you're building that you're excited about.
So I would echo what she just said. Is we have 9 traditional high schools. We built a new one, and it touched off quite a bit of controversy because we put aviation, because we got to build a new box, which is the way high school innovation, the only way it's usually done. You get a new box, you put new stuff in it. So we put all the new cutting edge stuff in it, and it created so much animosity, it cost us election seats in 2022. And so I'd been chief academic officer since 2018. We'd already begun to work, like, how do we take the walls off high school? How do we not let zip code determine the opportunities? Because we had a school on one side of the county, the part closest to Nashville, where you could take 26 AP classes. You could take a whole host of dual enrollment classes. We had a school on the most rural part where you could take maybe 1 AP class on alternate years. So how do we get at an equity piece that's not really defined by anything except just geography? Because the thing we kept hitting is buses and time, schedule and transportation. So we have launched an innovation center. We had a guy that started at his kitchen table a business. He became the industry leader in hotel business analytics. He sold his business for $450 million, kept the land and the building. It looks like a Colorado mountain retreat, but it's 60,000 square feet, and it's centrally located. We can go from the farthest point of the county to that location in 41 minutes on a bus. And so it lets us take transportation off. It lets us work on scheduling. And so what we're trying to really do is get at, how do we get kids to co-create with us, to identify design challenges, to take challenges from industry, to take internal challenges, nonprofits, charities. How do we build something where we can take those challenges and questions, give students to work towards a solution, allow them to fail, but provide them subject matter experts through nonprofits and industry and everything else, and then local community mentors. And then we build the dual enrollment credits, whatever else around it, to support that, instead of saying, you can have whatever you want as long as it's a Model T Ford. You got to check this box. You got to take personal finance junior year. You got to take government econ senior year. And then you'll graduate early because you're bored and checked out. So I think that's really exciting. And then I would say the other thing is building out. We were a heavy, just like them, heavy, high-quality instructional materials, early adopters, early investors, and we'd hit kind of a lull. And our work with Course Mojo has revitalized middle school literacy and HQIM usage. So those are the 2 things we're most proud of.
Lisa, can I ask some questions?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, Scott and LaTonya, I'm wondering, what do you do when some parents and community members, and maybe perhaps the general public, has a more standard definition of what a good school is? Or the metrics that is always published when people are shopping for homes, when they're looking at neighborhoods for what a good school is. Does that what do you do about that?
And so, of course, we have that. But one of the things I'm blessed with is the fact that I serve a population who needs leadership, who is excited about opportunity, and many who came to America for opportunity and landed in Texas. Perhaps my greatest challenge, and I know we kind of laughed about it earlier, has been fighting the past with board members and others who remember how education used to be. As we talked about Hill, and while I'm excited about the opportunities that our kids to have mentorship and have opportunity, it was a fight. And had it not been for philanthropy, had it just had to evolve through the boardroom, it would have been more tough because the ninth grade center is what we took over, and the ninth grade centers were built in the 90s to stop pregnancy in Aldine. You heard me right. And so we were having a conversation about how we could repurpose ninth grade centers to provide choice throughout our district, and we got pushback from board members because they remembered why we had those to begin with. And so I'm very blessed because I've served in systems where you have the haves and have-nots, or you have zip codes that are more affluent, but because 100% of my schools are high need, my parents are excited about having voice, about having choice, about providing feedback, and excited about the opportunities that their kids are going to have that they did not have. And so my pushback has been more from the boardroom than from the community.
I think we have a little bit of both. I think it's interesting in a community that's evolving as rapidly as ours are because of our proximity to Nashville. We have this kind of old guard that's traditionally African American and white, and we struggle with them. They're all in their 70s and 80s now, and they have a very low expectation sometimes for what our kids can do. And they feel very afraid when we're pushing. I think we have a lot of first generation still high school graduates, post-secondary, they want their kids to go to college, but they're terrified that their kids are going to fail. And so they don't push them to take advantage of opportunities because they don't want them to fail and feel unsuccessful. So I think the biggest challenge, and I think this is a role for a district leader in the future increasingly, one is to be aspirational, to name and to show the data to show this is what will happen even if you struggle in an AP class. Your ACT score will go up about 1.25 points. You know, it will open up these numbers of doors to tell them, hey, valedictorian or 4.0 GPA, if you want that, that's great, but it's not going to change much for your future outcomes. Taking 12 or 15 or 25 opportunities, whether that's in a career pathway, whether it's in AP dual enrollment, I think the biggest advice I would give, you know, for superintendents, we don't get a lot of training on politics, yet politics defines most of our job. I will tell you this, like, I got questioned before I became superintendent. Now, granted, like, I'm kind of a live wire in Sumner County politics. Like, just type my name in Facebook. You have about an hour of interesting reading. One of the best things about being here today is none of those people came. But they seriously asked questions at the board meeting after they'd hired me when I signed my contract, because I shifted from being a Sumner County Schools employee to being the one employee of the school board. They seriously asked, like, well, what if he's a member of a drug cartel? And the whole first year, their campaign mantra was "Fire Langford," which gives you a lot of courage. Wow. And actually, it really liberates you, because then you can do whatever you want, because if they're going to fire you anyway, might as well take a shot on the way out. But what I learned from 2018, when I came to the central office, to now is, if we don't tell our story, other people will tell it for us, and they will not tell it in a way that captures what I see every day. What moves me is when I see our kids that had limited opportunities and outcomes, and all of a sudden they are on fire, and we've opened a door for them. But we have to be better. We get busy, and we got 8 million things, and we forget to do it. We have to tell our story.
How do you
individually and collectively.
Yeah, how do you know your innovations are working? Like, when you think about the story, what data are you sharing? What stories are you telling to the community about the things you've just described?
Happy to take that one.
Yeah.
We talk to our students. We talk to our current students. We talk to our alumni. We say, like, how are you doing? Did we do our job? What are your successes, and what could we have done better? Because I think none of our students are perfect success stories, because they're amazing individuals, and our ability to collectively lift up and to say how, so whenever we design new schools, students are part of those advisory committees. we eventually hire them into our schools because it is important that these are the schools that are meant for them, for their younger brothers and sisters, for their cousins that are going to be going to those schools. So I think that that's a super concrete thing. I mean, to Scott's point, there are so many things that you need to do as a public figure, as a politician, as a superintendent of schools. But if we do not take control of directing and saying, these are our number one, number two big accomplishments that we are aiming for, and get people convinced about that, then we've lost them. Right? And a lot of times, suggestions that I get is actually around like, do not try to defend what you are not doing. Talk about what you are doing and raise and lift that up. Because if you start talking about, well, we're not doing that because, then you're defending something on somebody else's terms. So let's go ahead and talk about the fact that at this point in time, we have over 200,000 students that are getting paid internships across our city.
Wow.
Right? And that we're creating pathways that, regardless of your documentation status, that we're saying that needs to start in 9th grade. And so we're not saying, well, what are you doing about like how many AP exams? We're saying, well, here are the things that we are, in fact, putting into place. And then I also think that like how do we know how we're doing is that we have to think about how do we activate the sort of push and pull factors. So getting higher ed to be able to say, and getting our employers and our business council to be able to say, you know what, that transcript that you have, we take it because that's the best that we've got. But what I really want is actually a transcript that tells us the real skills, the evidence, and the artifacts of the high quality work that young students know and understand. If you can give me that, that's going to drive the work. And so we take that and we say, you know what? They actually don't care what grade they got in 9th grade geometry or algebra in first semester. What they care about is, do we have evidence that the students are able to not only defend their work, but to articulate it, apply it in different contexts and settings. And that visceral, clear evidence is much more powerful and frankly more predictive of success than that historical transcript is able to show.
And I can't, if I may,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have to add on to the fact that it's so important that we tell our own stories. As I said earlier, it was really important for me, and when you serve a district like I serve, Black, brown, poverty, when people see the district, when they see our students, they don't see success, they don't see the beautiful potential that we all see in the work that we've done. And so you also have to share the data. And you think about it, in 2021, we had about 46% of our students graduating with CCMR, college career and military ready. And this past year, we have over 90%, and that's so important. So it was a mantra going in 2018 that we wanted our students to graduate with more than a high school diploma. We want to graduate with choices and opportunities. Well, that doesn't happen by chance. It happens with work. In addition, as we were in 2018, I remember sitting at the graduation, seeing where our brightest students were attending college or how much was raised in scholarships. And back then, for 12 high schools, 5 which are comprehensive, we would raise about $24 million, and everybody was happy. I come from a one high school town in which we raised $24 million, so I knew that wasn't satisfactory. And so this upcoming year, we're over $700 million in college scholarships.
Congratulations.
And so I share that because ultimately the work that we do every day is not only preparing them to have choices now, today, but also making sure that when they walk out of our doors that they have choices and opportunities. So we basically have made sure that mantra is true. In addition, we also make sure that our students, they believe it. I have a superintendent advisory, through student voice, through sharing their stories, they see themselves. I talked about Hill earlier. When we had our ribbon cutting and we were able to go around and to the different spots, it was the students who were leading it. They were dressed like, you could even tell if they were a Memorial Hermann employee, whether they were a teacher or what, because they were so prepared to present and to share. And so it's so important that we tell our stories, so important that we lead with the data, because many times they'll lead with the most critical point and not necessarily show all of the successes that we've had.
Yeah, I think I would like to just add a couple little things. I think one is the data that we've made the academic achievement data an end instead of a measure. And by going there, we've really limited what we can do. And we've got to put that in the right place, because I say every time I get the opportunity, I have never once had anybody ask me the value of a high school Algebra 2 end of course exam. But I've had them ask me a million questions about everything else that we do. And I can tell you, like, when we light a fire in our kids to do meaningful things, I think this generation will either be the most missional or the most transactional, and that's going to be dependent on, the Gen X thing hurt. Except for my knees, hands, and joints, I feel young. But I think that, like, we at our Innovation Center, we have a leadership group of kids, and they're building out a website they're project managing to provide meaningful community service hours. They're partnering with a group, Middle Tennessee United Way, Hands on Nashville's expanding to Sumner County. These girls have done all this on their own. But what's amazing to me is the ripple effect of that, because they've gone back to their schools. They're from all of our high schools. They've gone back. We had a group of girls from one of the high schools that, instead of just doing a regular FCCLA project, they upcycled dresses. They got over $500,000 of prom dresses donated, and then they created a space for kids to come in and get dresses. And they started off wanting to make prom accessible for everyone, but then they realized, like, hey, this is just good for everybody to upcycle their things, and then it removes any stigma of poverty or anything. So now they've gotten tied in with, to get your hair done, to get your nails done, to get shoes, for boys to get tuxedos. And this all was student initiated, just because we rolled the ball out there and let them go, and then provided mentoring and support. And I think we have to figure out a way to capture those stories of success and then create metrics, because I honestly think for high school especially, I think Alan probably have a great perspective on this, is our measuring stick should be 5 years after graduation, not what they do their junior year on a test.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to throw one more complication into the mix, which is AI, right? So you've all talked about reimagining school, reimagining high school, thinking differently about districts of the future, but you haven't yet talked about the role AI is playing in your district or in children's lives. How are you thinking about that as system leaders right now?
I can take that one.
Go ahead.
I don't want to let. I want to talk back to a previous comment, so I will make sure to answer that. I think, Scott, and LaTonya, one of the things that you guys talked about is sort of like creating this narrative, and this will very likely be controversial in this room. As public school leaders, I recognize that, or rather, let me do this. Hi.
Everybody worked in a district.
Yeah,
you saw
you've
them.
worked in a district. So our jobs are made harder in part because of the messages that you've been putting out there about public schools. And the thing that I want to say here is that inherent in the case for change that sometimes you are making for why innovation is necessary and why we need to go outside of the system is a critique of our public schools. And I need to name that, because not that all public schools and all public school systems are a tremendous success for our young people. We absolutely, as the leaders of our system, own that responsibility, the historical damage that is done, and the work that we have to do. But this work is hard enough that in many of our largest public school districts, to not be working together to say, how do we create this bigger ecosystem of what young people in our cities need, and how do we build that together, as opposed to a competitive, I'm going to create this because that is broken, is a challenge that we're wrestling with. And so we're talking about the schools or the district of the future, right? And in many ways, as leaders of these districts, we have to operate, as a really good friend said, we have to operate 2 operating systems at once. And so whether that's Windows 95 and a Mac OS, but you literally, or the idea that we function on behalf of a system that has been created that has 100-year-old buildings, that have contracts and policies and purchasing regulations and lawyers. And so we are doing our absolute best to be able to create the conditions for innovation in those settings while simultaneously dreaming big, opening up new things. And what we want and most need are real partners in that work. And so that wasn't your question about AI.
I'm glad you answered that question.
But I like there's a thing that like we need to talk about how we can do that work together. So put the mic down on that one. Pick up.
You can drop it.
You can drop it.
Pick up the next one around AI, and I think we've heard so much this morning. I think last weekend we had pieces in the New Yorker, New York Magazine, 3 articles in the New York Times, all talking about the real challenges and fears and concerns that we're hearing from families about the use of AI in schools. Well, simultaneously, you can be in another conference in the same city or somewhere else, perhaps another one in a sunny California town, a coastal area that might have thousands of people that say, look, there's some really great things and possibilities with AI. And I will put forth here, personal opinion, not on behalf of the city, but one of the most important things that we need to do for our public schools is to be able to preserve the very human skills that we need to be able to develop. And what I mean by that is that please, you can clap, I don't mean to stop you. What I mean by that is that in so many ways, in an increasingly polarized society, where civic discourse is so challenging, our public schools are in fact one of the last civic squares for young people to be able to develop those skills. And so my goal as a school leader and district leader is to think about, in the age of AI, how do we help young people thrive? How do we develop the particular skills that are going to be necessary? And that means really preserving the idea that in many of our portraits of our graduate, we talk about an effective communicator, a collaborative problem solver, a global citizen, a deep critical thinker, and person who can work across difference. And so, yes, there is fantastic work that we need to do around HQIM, around one-on-one supports, around tutoring, and helping them be successful with those skills. But we also need to be able to elevate all the different ways in which we can consider not so much what AI can do to help schools solely, but also what can schools do to prepare students to live and thrive and be that best neighbor, citizen, firefighter, the people you need in your community in an age where AI is going to be so dominant. So if that's the work, and we flip that paradigm and say, well, if that's the world that we are all entering into, what is the role of our public schools in service of developing those human beings?
Yeah, and I think I would piggyback off of a lot of that. I think we have to get past the notion on one hand. What worries me, I've done a lot of speaking in Tennessee about AI, and what I hear from a lot of school districts are not like, how great is Course Mojo, how great is Paloma, that we also partner with, but it's abject fear, like one of cheating. So I start off every one of those talks now, cheating has existed since Pencils and Neighbors, it's always been here, it's not going away. You know, it's easier to catch kids with ChatGPT because it likes adverbs and 10th graders don't. But I think more importantly is we're falling back into a pattern where we say, let's get early adopters that are really good at this and we'll let them build all the models. And the problem is the world in AI is going to change so fast that by the time we build those models, there'll be something new, and we will be evolving and innovating, and those districts will get farther and farther behind, and it's going to gas in a way we've never seen before, I think, the inequalities and inequities across a state or region just based on how they adopt and choose AI tools. Because I agree wholeheartedly that we have to preserve the human aspects, because I think ultimately how AI benefits a student or a school system or whatever else it is based on the skill of leadership and implementation. What are we trying to get? We have to have a philosophy of teaching and learning that we integrate AI into, not that AI is going to solve the problems for us. But on a positive note, what I think is exciting, what we've seen with our work with Course Mojo, instruction partners, you get the right partners together, you can put into the hands of your teachers real-time qualitative and quantitative data that allows them to make instructional decisions instantly, even down things into observing misconceptions that they're seeing in a lesson. So we're not having to try to recapture that in an intervention time. We're not having to try to create after-school tutoring that's inequitable based on whether kids ride the bus. We can hit it real-time in the classroom, and it gives kids a forum through a device to ask questions and not feel singled out. It also gives them a device that doesn't recognize the color of their skin or their economic background. It just knows your answers and pushes you. Or the language that you're speaking. The biggest thing we had with Course Mojo is our gifted kids absolutely hated it because it didn't accept "I'm really smart" as an answer. And that was where we had lost the most growth over the years, is because our smart kids, our teachers looked out there and said, well, that kid's gifted. I know he or she's got it. I don't have to push them. And they weren't getting the push that they needed to reach where they could. So I think that I think that we will be remiss if we don't start articulating, those of us that are on the innovative side, those of us that are seeing the benefits, we've got to find that sweet spot and articulate what the use of ed tech is to drive change for students.
I want to also add to my other answer, which is that, I think it's so important that we have students building, creating, showcasing what it is that they're capable of doing with AI tools, right? I think it is on, one of the most amazing things is that the students are able to have access to high quality, live, current research. And so, for example, you might have a ninth grade student who's brand new to the country, does not speak any English, and is in a class taking about biology and climate change and that cycle, and wants to be able to do a research project. Their ability to go deeply into the most recent MIT published report about sea level rise and how that's going to impact communities is vastly expanded because they have access to high quality AI tools. Now, for them to be able to do, not just take the tests, not just to be able to create an amazing written report or a PowerPoint slide, to be able to do something with that research is also far more powerful because of the kind of tools at their disposal to create something for a far wider audience and to engage in a revision process of that work, right? So I do think that there are also ways for us to be able to expand the uses, both for accessibility, but also for showcasing what it is that they're capable of doing.
So my friend Scott here, he whispered over here, and he doesn't know that he struck a chord, because I remember growing up, I didn't have the encyclopedias. Growing up in poverty, you don't have encyclopedias. So I had to go to a neighbor's house and borrow the encyclopedia. And so we think about that was 1980s, and today it's AI. And so I totally agree that we need to preserve the human component for our classrooms. Absolutely. Teachers matter, connections matter, relationships matter. But I also believe that there is a role for AI, and we're seeing it play out in our own districts. But I also believe that it has to be vision-driven and not vendor-driven. In addition, we've got to be able to work with, as we design the experiences for our students, and it's got to enhance the teaching experience, the learning experience. And we have all kinds of models, whether it's the personalized learning, which is helping us. We don't have a plethora of great teachers in Texas, and those who are there, they want to go to the suburbs. They want to go where there's more affluence and fewer challenges. And so when we think about how we can build and onto the capacity of our teachers as we expect high quality instruction materials, and so utilizing Course Mojo and the way we were able to roll it out, making sure that I was an English language arts teacher. It took me sometimes a week to get all those things graded and the feedback. And by the end, it was antiquated, and believe it or not, the students didn't read it. But to have real-time, immediate feedback is powerful. When we think about the personalized learning that we have through Amira that supports our students who have significant gaps during our intervention block, that's powerful. when we think about our teachers who need some more time and Magic School AI and how it helps, whether it's Gemini, Cloud, or whatever you use, that's powerful. But even more so, through the session that we sat in earlier, I began about the encyclopedia. And I do believe, as those who were on this panel before us said, if we don't create ways in which our students can utilize AI in a way that's competitive and helpful and builds their curiosity, then the jobs that they would qualify aren't going to exist because AI is taking over. And so I think that we need to have real discussions on how we can be, because the minute we talk about it, it's already changed, and so that's going to be the future.
That's so important. And I feel like we've talked a little bit about the feedback to EdTech and some about the feedback to other partners in the community, maybe charters, privates, et cetera. I want to talk about philanthropy now. So, LaTonya, question for you. Pete Fishman did this Skeptics Corner in his panel just now that I loved. So I'm going to be the skeptic here. Why would I, philanthropist, give you my money when you have a $500,000 budget? Like, you have that money, right? You don't need my money.
So let's talk about that for a second. When you think about any philanthropy whose vision is aligned with ours, Aldine, we do need your money, and you can come and look at our portfolio of opportunities that we've created for students and see how we've been able to enhance the learning experience and the opportunities for our students when they graduate, as I stated earlier. But when we think about districts' budgets, 85–90% is personnel. When we think about budgets, they are governed. There are two things that boards do. They hire the superintendent and they control the budget. Coming in as a new soup, it would have been harder, more difficult for us to get those proof points to demonstrate what was possible if I had to convince a board. So the philanthropy allowed me to be able to get some proof points to build the momentum, and then, of course, gives me time to right-size, stop doing some things so that we can pick it up. Philanthropy is so important for public school districts as you think about moving forward. And what we've been very proud, everyone who's partnered with us, and they can attest to it, they come in and they build with us. They look and understand the context of what we're trying to do. They go and review our strategic plans and look at how we're going to be able to move forward. And we've had great success. And so you can't look at a district's budget and say, hey, their budget is $60 million. But what you don't know with operational costs, personnel costs, there's not a lot of room for anything innovative. And so philanthropy has allowed us to use those dollars to accelerate innovation.
And I feel okay picking on you too, because
okay.
I live in Texas, and I cannot tell you how many Texas districts are now interested in doing the things that Aldine did. When even if someone else did it,
Not just Texas.
they don't think, they don't think it's possible in a district, right? Some school somewhere else with different kids did it, and they're not interested. When they find out that LaTonya did it, they go immediately.
And I'm guilty.
It.
You know, this is my 18th year as a superintendent. I started in a small rural district, served in a one high school district, and it wasn't common for philanthropy. When I made it to Aldine, I was thankful that we did have an accelerator, Good Reason Houston, who exposed. I also had a partnership. We were the first district in Texas to have a partnership with a charter. And so I learned from charter operators. In Texas, back then, ISDs didn't talk to charters. But listen.
Most of them still don't.
Most of them still don't, but listen, I do, because they're doing some good work. I went and visited IDEA. I went and visited Yes Prep. I went and visited other schools to see, okay, how are you making this happen? What are you doing? What curriculum are you using? How are you moving the needle for Black, Brown, and students of poverty? And it was amazing to hear the responses and the opportunity to collaborate, because coming out of a traditional ISD with a traditional Texas mindset, you didn't have those conversations. And then all the rooms with funders, many of them, you have only the charters there. There are very few ISDs who are here because they either don't know, or they've been conditioned to not believe, or have been turned off by the fact that many don't believe that public schools are doing a great job. So I am thankful for the people who've been put in my path, who have exposed me to what's possible, and thankful for the philanthropy who have an interest in, again, I keep saying it, but demonstrating what's possible for Black, Brown, and students of poverty, because it's been remarkable.
Yeah, I think I would piggyback off that. I think that I spoke last week at a group in Nashville. I think I'm the first public school leader, non-charter, to speak at that group. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, hey, at what point are we going to put down the weapons and just work together? There's
That's
enough
right.
resources. Let's stop fighting against each other. Let's work together. Let's identify. Because I think, like, you know, as I've talked to people, I've seen, like, even with small school districts, you either have one high school or you have a whole bunch. When you're trying to build out career pathways, you face the same problem. If you got a bunch of high schools, you still have transportation scheduled. If you have one high school, you got to figure out how you can pull other high schools in similar places together to work together. But I do think, I think the radical collaboration between philanthropy and larger school districts, we can build models that independent schools and small schools that can't because we run at scale, right? Like 200,000 kids getting paid for internships is something that only New York City schools can do. But you can build out a model that the rest of us can adopt. And that's what we're trying to do with our Innovation Center is not just how do we run this for Sumner County, how do we make it regional? No one's done that before in Tennessee. How do we bring kids from Metro Nashville and Trousdale County and all over because we've been blessed with something no one else has. So let's take advantage of it. How do we partner with higher ed? How do we do all these things? But where we get stuck is in the seed and startup money to get started and build that so that then we can scale it and run it off of our own budget. I can do that once we get it going, but philanthropic giving would really help us be able to build that model. And to Alan's point earlier, we would 110% give that away to everybody.
You heard it. You heard it here first. If you want to work in a district, come up here. If you want to fund a district, come up here.
We actually, we have a Venmo. we don't have New York money in the South.
We don't have New York money in the South, no.
Just kidding, Alan's included too.
So I know we're coming close to time. I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions, and then we're going to let y'all do a closing statement. We offered our superintendents mic runners, and they said, no way, we want to talk to the audience. So superintendents will be coming out to the audience to pick who they want to answer questions from.
So if you have a question.
If you're in the very back, you get Alan, because I can't make it through all those tables.
There you go.
Mo Tracy Mooney. I'm from Future Ed. We're an education think tank based out of Georgetown. There's a super unsexy topic, school infrastructure, that really undermines the ability of districts to do innovative things, whether that's because of the cost of addressing facilities issues or the constraints of buildings. I'm curious if any of you have had success in raising additional funds, philanthropic or otherwise, to address those, or if there's any innovative strategies that have helped you address that challenge.
So I was in the philanthropic giving session just before this one, and I thought it was interesting because that exact topic didn't come up. But what I think is interesting is one of the things they were saying is you have to let your needs be known to your community and network beyond that, because we got our 60,000 square foot innovation center. We're leasing it for $6 a square foot for 30 years. And we got it because my chief financial officer's daughter plays volleyball with the foundation trust of the Smith family that owned the building before. And she knew what my CFO said, hey, are y'all doing anything with the building now that it's empty? And she said, no, we'd really like to do something missional. And we're like, buy it, get it, we want it. I've had some talks with other districts that have wanted to do similar type things. They don't have that or a benefactor to do that. But I think sometimes if we got really creative, because my brother is a teacher in Leeds, Alabama, and his superintendent basically said, well, we don't have anything like that. We can't do that level of innovation. I was like, you've got a factory. You've got an abandoned factory that somebody would probably give you. It would be perfect. You can adapt and use space. Kingsport City Schools in Tennessee bought the old World Book Repository. Sorry, more World Books, but I haven't used that word in a long time. I've used it twice today. But I think if we're creative, and this is another area where I think partnerships would be great, let's repurpose space. Imagine the economic development in an area if we repurposed a space to be cool for kids and innovative, while at the same time we're changing the face of a downtown area or city square.
Scott, I would add to that, right? I mean, exactly on that point. Learning does not only happen in schools. So, yes, infrastructure, the physical plant is really important, and they're oftentimes really costly. Some of our buildings take so much money, and to do construction on a building when students are in the building, you might as well just tear it down and build a new one. However, if we rethink the paradigm in two ways, right? One is, what does it mean for us to really be expansive about where learning occurs? How do we award credit, recognize that, inspire and support the community to be able to say, it's not just internships, but the idea of learning outside of the classroom walls goes a very long way towards doing that. I think a second thing is that many of us that are not in the South, but in our bigger cities, are having declining birth rates, out-migration, and are dealing...
That's in the South, too. That's in the South.
and I think here, oftentimes we think about this as just a terrible reality that we have to deal with, right? Why don't we just rip the Band-Aid off? We're constantly trying to convince people that this is the least bad of all the options of school closures and mergers and the like. But what if we did a bit of radical reimagining about what is possible? So New York City Public Schools is actually one of the largest property owners in New York. What if we said that, what would be really helpful for this community and families is if we are able to, I'm not committing to anything here, but
You heard it here first. It's going to be in Atlanta.
No. There's some really phenomenal cities that are doing this, San Diego being one, right? What if we found a way of converting some of these things to housing so that we can support the recruitment of our teachers into our schools? What if we thought about, one of the key things that would really help is if we got young people, families, driver's licenses, so they can get access to a different kind of line of job that is more stable. What if we made those places where we can provide early childcare so that families can work longer hours? And that's what's needed. And if we think about this as what does our community need, those benefits ripple all the way through. And it is not purely, we run schools, and so therefore we should think about what our students need, but rather the much bigger community.
Absolutely, and I would just add, please come out and visit Hill. I know I've spoken a lot of it, is just fresh on my mind, but literally through philanthropy, we were able to build the mock hospital on a campus that was under-enrolled and had a different purpose in the past. In addition, we passed a $1.8 billion bond to rebuild some of our older facilities. So infrastructure cannot be excused for not innovating, so we don't need to rebuild those buildings exactly as they were built. As we move forward, we need to have partners as we have for Hill and our other high schools. So we're going to be rebuilding all of our high schools. So our transformation office is already, number one, fielding calls from those who want to partner and do something similar, as well as utilizing that opportunity to, again, build schools for the future. We have a question right here.
Yes, I'm thinking a lot about using AI and choosing the right models and tools, and I'm thinking about professional development for teachers and principals and how to effectively roll out these tools for positive student outcomes. And so I'm thinking about I'm really wondering, how are you thinking about choosing the most effective AI tools and models, and how do you balance AI leading instruction with the professional wisdom and training of teachers and principals?
And I'll take it, because let me tell you, I'm going to say it, everything is not AI. It's become the new buzzword. Like things that we had the week before AI became popular, all of a sudden AI infused. And the other thing that I listened to the other panel before us, and it certainly resonated with me because this is what we do. Pilot is not a bad word. As we think about Course Mojo and our partnership with them, it was an opportunity to look and provide feedback as we were growing. And literally, we started with 3 schools and got feedback from our teachers. And guess what? You don't have to push it down then. Teachers' feedback has been given, and then everybody wants it. So we started at 3 middle schools. Now every middle school wants it, not because district office said it, but number one, we got double-digit gains at those campuses. I mean, it's real. Number 2, we got feedback. We did surveys, and when you have 100% of teachers who can agree with anything, it's pretty powerful. 100% of our teachers said that it makes their job easier. And this is middle school. I know, exactly, especially at middle school. And so I think that pilots are definitely open. There are others where I look to other people. Like I will call Scott, I'll call Alan and say, hey, tell me about your implementation of X, and they will share what they've done, and then I'm more open to that. But we're not gonna just buy something because they promise success. In addition, it's also an entry point. I hate when people sell you something and then walk off. People get excited about building it, and then once it's built, they walk off. Your true partners are going to be there with you, alongside you as you're implementing, as you're launching, taking feedback, surveying, and seeing what the true impact is.
We got one right here.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Alan not to respond because there's only one New York. So we can't replicate what happens in New York. Okay. At scale.
That's right. After this,
Go
we'll do
third.
closing
Go
statements.
third. All right, here we go. I feel like so often we hear that the system can't change, and we have two leaders in here of a larger than average school district compared to all school districts in the country. So my question for you, given the audience in here, is to actually have you ideate and say, how do we 100x you in your type of thinking among other system leaders? Because this is what we need more of, right? So how do we get more of you everywhere? This type of thinking.
Well, that may not be popular everywhere. I think that, I think that, like, for me, I got to where I am because I got chosen to be on the Common Core Leadership Council when we were rolling out in 2011 in Tennessee. I was an assistant principal. And Kevin Huffman and Emily Freitag invested in me and poured into me and showed me the power of instructional leadership. And then I had 100 other people. I mean, I tell people now I should be Teach for America alumni because they poured so much into me.
True.
But I think you have to name for young leaders that collaboration and work together across district lines on big projects is really important. And then we have to cultivate that, and we have to create the spaces. One of the things I fear the most, and I think why there's a gap in that now, is we had that in Tennessee, and every bit of education reform that's happened in Tennessee over the last 15 years came out of that Common Core leadership group. I'm one of the only ones left, right? Everybody else is just about retired. And we haven't rebuilt that over time. So, I mean, honestly, we were talking earlier, like things like this, where we have time, if we could get a group of young leaders to hear these conversations and meet, it's up to us to not just do this for kids, but to mentor future leaders as well.
Absolutely. And what we're, yes, please give him a round of applause, because I'm just going to add to it. We have to open our doors. And so, in addition, we have to be able to share how we failed and then also our successes. Dr. Bustillos, we host about, 100 visits a year easily, where in Texas, again, we weren't Common Core either, so don't go and say we were ever Common Core.
We weren't either, really. We dropped that.
But the idea of partnering, the idea of looking, listening, and learning from charters and others, the idea of philanthropy, it is truly new and taken off in Texas. And Aldine is very proud to lead the way. And so we host a lot of visitors. We host a lot of critical friends, feedback sessions. And truly, when they come to our district, guess what? Our district doesn't look like every other district in Texas. When I told you, nearly 100% Black, brown, and students of poverty, so they walk in with a mindset, and then when they go in our classrooms and see it happening, and they know what they have in their classroom, their kids are born on third base, they get excited about it because they said, oh my gosh, if it can work here, it can work anywhere. And so I think we have to open our doors. No longer are we competing, we've got to be collaborative.
So I know we're coming up on time. Yes. So I want to give each of our superintendents a chance to give a closing statement, but then folks can stay up here and answer more questions after the panel. So LaTonya, do you want to start? Anything else you want the group to take away?
No, I just want to make sure that everyone understands the importance of this moment. And it's a moment that many hadn't seen and probably perhaps won't forget. And recognizing the opportunities in this room and the opportunities that exist in our public schools. And so just grateful that philanthropy sees an open door to working with us in order to make sure that the students who are in our care get the support they need so that they can have brighter futures. So I'm just honored to be in this space and just excited about what's possible, because only through education are we going to be able to change the trajectories of the students' lives and change the narrative out there that public schools aren't working.
I would just echo that. I had the opportunity about a month and a half ago in Tennessee to be at an AI summit that was not education themed. We had the Chief Technical Officer of the United States there. We had head of the Oak Ridge Labs. And the word that they kept using is something that I think education can bring to that space, because it was mostly higher ed, science, industry, IT, everything. And they kept talking about radical collaboration. And at the tables, they had no idea how to do it. I'm like, we're naturally really pretty good at that in the education space. I was like, I don't know the calculus that you're talking about, but I understand how to get a group of people at a table to talk. And they said radical collaboration. It's the first time in my career where I felt like industry, higher ed, K-12, charters, private, everybody wants to work together because they realize, like, I'll close with a Game of Thrones reference. We're over here fighting for We're fighting for a worthless throne, and the White Walkers are advancing quickly. Like it's time to work together and fight the right enemy. And I do think from this morning, complacency is the number one. Doing nothing is the biggest enemy that we face. Or doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, Alan, you get the last word.
All right. Like a good teacher, you have to circulate, get to the back of the room. So I think not all problems are hard, but for our hardest problems, the work of our districts is to be able to think about how we create the conditions for bottom-up innovation. And so for the problems that we don't know how to solve, the best thing leaders can do is to provide top-down support for bottom-up innovation and to ensure that the learnings from that are truly studied, recognized, and then spread across. And so as leaders, how do we make that work? How do we celebrate those bright spots? How do we look at variation not as errors, but rather as things that we can study? Because building those conditions for success are some of the most important things that we do, and that culture that celebrates that work is going to be successful.
Awesome.
Thank you. Please join me in giving them a great round of applause. And if you want a job or you want to give a grant, come talk to us.
Or if you want to work in our districts.
Oh, come on down to Texas.